Welcome to BizJet TV. My name is Fabrizio, and today's episode we're going to be comparing two top jets in the long-range category. We're going to be talking about the Gulfstream G5 and the Global Express. They're both older aeroplanes, but there are a few of them available on the market. You can either lease them or buy one. So we're going to look at side by side these two aeroplanes, look at some of the numbers, but also I'm going to give you some inside information which I think is really, really important when you're acquiring a private jet. Now, both these airplanes today on the market can be bought for less than $10 million. You're just going to be a little bit careful on what you're buying. So there's 181 active Gulfstream G5s on the market, as you can see. Not on the market, I mean out there flying, and 135 Global Expresses. The Global Express is built by Bombardier, by the way. The Gulfstream G5 is built obviously by Gulfstream. When you compare the what's for sale and lease, there's only 5% of the fleet available right now for sale or lease on the G5, and 11% on the Global Express. So there's a few more Global Expresses out there. That's kind of giving you a bit of an indication that the G5 owners are holding on to their aeroplanes, while the Global Express owners are looking more to sell. So that's kind of a little bit of an indicator there. Now, when we look at cabin size, cabin size is important because you're going to spend most of your time sitting inside the aeroplane. I know some people look at the outside and they say, oh, this looks nicer than that, but remember, most of your time is going to be spent inside the cabin. So the cabin side is going to be important, in particular if you're flying larger groups. Now, the cabin length on the G5 is slightly longer. It's 50 feet 1 inch compared to 48 feet 5 inches. But what you have on the Global Express is a wider cabin. We're talking 8 foot 2 inches compared to 7 foot 4 inches. So when you get into a Global Express, you get more of a feeling of it's a lot bigger. Okay, so because it's got this wider cabin. And then it's a little bit taller. It's an inch taller. The cabin is 6 foot 3 on the Global Express compared to 6 foot 2 on the G5. So if you're flying, larger groups of people, long distance, 6 to 8 or whatever, and cabin size for you is important, then, the Global Express is certainly something you need to be looking at compared to the G5. Weight-wise, of course, the Global Express having a larger cabin weighs more. That's 98,000 pounds compared to 90,500. This has an effect on the performance and also the operating costs of the airplane overall, because if it weighs more, it consumes more fuel usually, and that's the case. Now, if we look at landing performance, interestingly enough, even though it's heavier, the Global Express can land 2,800 feet compared to 3,200 feet on the Gulfstream. Takeoff, though, the Gulfstream needs just 5,150 feet, while the Global Express needs 6,300 feet, and that's because it weighs more there. Fuel burn, obviously, as I said before, the Global Express burns more fuel, 581 gallons per hour compared to 436 gallons per hour of the Gulfstream. Range-wise, the Gulfstream's got a lot more range. We're talking 6,500 nautical mile range compared to 5,960 nautical miles on the Global Express. If we're looking at variable costs, calculating that at 250 hours of flying a year, the G5 is just over $1,220. $1,220,000 compared to $1,275,000 on the Global Express. And if we look at the fixed cost, $577,000 for the G5 and $585,000 for the Global Express. If we add those two numbers together and we divide it by 250 hours, it turns out that the G5 is going to cost you $7,193 an hour to operate, while the Global Express $7,447 an hour. Now, those are the core numbers there. But then looking at the market, and I talk to lots of friends that fly G5, Global Express, or flown both. I talk to owners as well, see what their feel is. And when you're buying a private jet, reliability is really, really important. Now, of course, when you buy a new airplane, most new airplanes are reliable. So you're not going to have a problem whether you're flying a Global Express or G5. But G5, they don't build the G5 anymore, and they've just stopped building the G550, which is the newer version. And now they're going into the G500, 600, and 700 series. But what Gulfstream have done for the older aircraft, like you can purchase a G5 and you can upgrade the cabin, so you can put a new interior in it, new Wi-Fi in that, and you can also upgrade the avionics. And I've talked about this before. You can check the video about putting a G550 cockpit into a G5. That can be done. The SDC is out there, so that's an important message there that Gulfstream is sending clients that are buying an older Gulfstream, that Gulfstream are behind you there and will help you to upgrade your airplane. And it just builds longevity into the Gulfstream brand, which I think is a very, very clever business move. Bombardier with the Global Express, this talks now about upgrading the cabin of a Global Express to that of a Vision cockpit. So that's coming. Of course, the cockpit and the cabin, again, like all aircraft, you can improve the cabin. Both these airplanes do operate Rolls-Royce engines, very good engines and reliable. But I must say that talking to owners and pilots of both Global Expresses and G5s and that, the G5 tends to be a lot more reliable than the Global Express. The older Global Expresses tend to break down a lot, and this is something you need to calculate here. Yes, it's got a bigger cabin, okay, but if you are going to be buying a Global Express, you need to be careful on your pre-buy inspection. Make sure you buy something that's sound. If any work needs to be done on it, talk to a qualified engineer and make sure the things that need changing are changed, so this thing doesn't go tech, because at the end of the day, as I always tell people, you're not buying a plane, you're buying time when you're buying private jet. So the last thing you want is this thing to break down and it's grounded for 3 or 4 days when you're on a business trip and you need to get around fast. That's why people buy and operate private jets and fly private, because they want to save time. So you have to bear that one in mind. So if you're going to buy a Global Express, make sure that the pre-buy inspection is done very carefully. Any work that you need doing on it to upgrade things and changing valves and things like that, make sure that that's done, and make sure you've got a good mechanic, and also that you've got a good pilot that understands the systems, understands how to troubleshoot if things do go wrong, to just keep you flying. That's another important thing. Sometimes pilots can ruin airplanes by the way they fly the airplane. So that's why it's important to sort of get a good qualified pilot, pay them well so they stay, give them as much training as possible to keep them safe and knowledgeable about the airplane. That's really, really important. So, in the simulator, maybe schedule some extra training where they can look at different emergencies and situations and scenarios, so that if they do occur in the aircraft, they know exactly what to do. So the Global Express is a bit more tricky one to operate, to keep it flying, to keep it reliable. It's a lot more trickier, but if you want that larger cabin, then that's the airplane for you. If you want reliability and you're not too fussed about, having a bit of a smaller cabin, and maybe you need more range, because the G5 does have more range. I mean, these things are like tanks. All my friends that flying G5s, they said, I'm flying around this G5, it's 20 plus years old, and it never breaks. It just keeps flying. Very, very reliable machine. Now, what you tend to see difference-wise between Gulfstream and Bombardier, the saying is, if you want the latest and greatest technology, then buy a Global Express. If you want the airplane to keep flying, then buy a Gulfstream. That's kind of the saying, that you hear out there on the front line between these two aircraft. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to knock the Global Express. It is a good airplane. It will do the job. You just have to be a bit more careful if you're going to operate a Global Express than a Gulfstream G5. But, as I always say, it all depends on your needs and circumstances and that. That's why I encourage you to reach out. And if you want to do a call with me, you've seen my email coming across here on the video. Just ping me an email and I'll schedule you in for a Zoom call, and we'll have a chat about your needs and see what we can do, and whether it's a G5 for you or a Global Express. Well, that's all from me on this episode. I encourage you to have a look at the videos, specifically on the G5 and the Gulfstream range, where I go into more depth on that. And that's all from Fabrizio Pauly on BizJet TV, and I'll see you on the next one.